Brandon Ayuk shouted, "Go Commanders," on Instagram. Adam Schefter weighed in, and what he said is not what the DMV wants to hear. In a minute, I'm breaking down exactly why the move every Commanders fan is screaming for could be the most expensive mistake Adam Peters makes this offseason, and why Schefter was more blunt about it than anyone is admitting. But while Ayuk is putting on a show from his couch, there's a guy out in Ashburn being built in silence by the most dominant left tackle in the NFL. Josh Connerly Jr. went down to Alabama with Laramie Tunsil, came back a different man, and what Tunsil said about him when nobody was asking is the realest signal this offense has sent heading into 2026. I'm going to show you the one technical number Connerly has to cut in half for that promise to mean anything, and if he doesn't, the problem is not the body. And to close it out, the question's splitting the burgundy and gold right now. Dorrance Armstrong, Odafe Owa, Kelevon Chason, Darren Payne, 4 names, 1 crown. Raise hail, because the answer doesn't just tell you who leads Washington in sacks, it tells you exactly what kind of defense the Commanders are going to be in 2026. Let's get into it. Alright, let's talk about Brandon Ayuk, because this story has everything. Drama, broken loyalty, Kittle throwing shade, Schefter playing referee, and the Commanders standing in the background just watching. On Sunday night, June 22nd, Ayuk posted an Instagram story where he straight up yelled, "Go Commanders! Go Commanders! Go Commanders! Raise hail!" Take command. He was wearing burgundy and gold, staring into the camera, and basically submitting a job application in video format to Ashburn, Virginia. And look, as a Commanders fan, the first instinct is to get hyped, because if there's one thing we want, it's a top-tier wideout next to Terry McLaurin, so Jaden Daniels has the weapons he actually deserves. But once that initial wave passes, you have to sit down and look at this with clear eyes. Because the real situation around Ayuk is far more complicated than that video makes it seem. Let's go through the facts, because I think a lot of people in this conversation are missing pieces. Brandon Ayuk signed a 4-year, $120 million extension with the 49ers before the 2024 season. That's a massive number, a number that showed San Francisco's full confidence in him. Then, in week 7 of that same season, Ayuk shredded his knee against the Kansas City Chiefs, tearing his ACL and MCL at the same time. That is one of the most brutal injuries a wideout can take. In that season, he had produced 25 receptions for 374 yards, no touchdowns before going down. After that, instead of staying in communication with the team during his recovery, Ayuk cut off all contact with the 49ers midway through the 2025 season. San Francisco placed him on the reserve/left team list in December, and because he violated his contractual agreement by walking away from the team, the 49ers voided approximately $25 million in guaranteed money for 2026. Ayuk didn't challenge that decision, which in contract terms is almost an admission. There was also an arrest warrant related to a speeding incident in December, which just piled more noise onto a story that already had too much going on. And now here we are, Ayuk posting photos wearing a Commanders hat on June 6th, then a video screaming "Go Commanders" on June 22nd, and the 49ers still not cutting him or trading him, basically holding on to him as an asset nobody wants to buy at full price. That is the real context. Now let's talk about what George Kittle said, because I think it's the most revealing part of this whole saga. Kittle appeared on Pardon My Take, where PFT commenter, who is one of the most famous Commanders superfans in the country, asked him directly about Ayuk. And Kittle, who is one of the most genuinely honest and entertaining players in the league when he actually talks, was carefully honest. He said he used to make a habit of going out early in the mornings to watch Ayuk train, that he watched him run over 22 miles per hour and stop on a dime, and then he added, "But that was 8 months ago. I don't really know now. You guys have fun with that." That's not an endorsement, that is the answer of someone who knows Ayuk better than any scout in the NFL, and who is being deliberate with every word. When Kittle says, "have fun with that," he's communicating something without saying it outright, and when they asked him whether Ayuk would finally be happy once he left San Francisco, Kittle fired back, "You're right, I wouldn't be happy either after a team paid me $130 million. That's dynamite wrapped in humor. Kittle is saying in NFL player language that Ayuk's unhappiness isn't really about San Francisco, it's something deeper. And that should matter to the Commanders front office. Adam Schefter was even more direct. He said that every time Ayuk opens his mouth, he damages his standing with other teams and scares them away. And when asked specifically about Washington, the response was that they had some questions about Ayuk at this point. Coming from a front office that almost never says anything publicly, that's a meaningful statement. It doesn't mean they won't pursue him. Schefter specifically mentioned that Daniels and Ayuk were teammates at Arizona State, and that Jaden might push internally for him to come to Washington, but it does mean the Commanders are evaluating this risk with their eyes open. Look, I want to give you my honest take on this, because there are two types of fans here. The ones who see Ayuk's video and want to make this happen yesterday, and the ones who look at the full picture and pump the brakes. I'm somewhere in between, and let me tell you exactly why. The case for Ayuk is real. In 2023, he had 75 receptions, 1,342 yards, and 7 touchdowns, which earned him second-team All-Pro recognition. His route mechanics, his ability to create separation, his explosiveness in space, all of that existed, and it existed at an elite level. Kittle himself confirmed the athlete is still there, at least as of 8 months ago. And if Jaden Daniels pushes for him internally, that quarterback-receiver chemistry factor is not small. The Commanders lost the 2025 season in large part because of protection issues and a lack of reliable weapons. A healthy and committed Ayuk next to McLaurin could genuinely shift what this offense looks like, but the case against is also legitimate. We have not seen this man play in an actual NFL game since Week 7 of 2024. That's almost 2 years without live game action at the NFL level. An ACL plus MCL tear is a devastating combination, and some wideouts come back exactly the same, while others never fully recover that separation burst. No guaranteed money remaining, no recent game film, a massive contract overhang, and a track record of conduct that raises real red flags for any front office. The question Adam Peters has to answer isn't, is Brandon Ayuk talented? The question is this Ayuk with this history, this medical uncertainty, and this behavioral pattern the best investment I can make with our available cap resources right now? And honestly, I don't know how Peters answers that. What I do know is that if San Francisco eventually cuts him, the open market is going to be cold, because it wasn't just Schefter raising his hand with concerns. Beat reporters covering teams that might hypothetically be interested are all saying versions of the same thing. This is a player who needs to convince organizations he can be a professional before he can convince them he's still an all-pro wideout. Those are two separate conversations, and you cannot have the second one without winning the first. Okay, let's go from social media drama to the actual work being done, because while Ayuk is out here screaming "Go Commanders" from his living room, there are guys in Ashburn sweating through a process that is going to determine what this team looks like in September. And the most interesting story coming out of those practice fields this week has nothing to do with trades. It has to do with what happens when the best offensive tackle on the roster decides to fully commit to mentoring the young tackle across from him. Josh Connerly Jr. was the 29th overall pick in the 2025 draft, a right tackle from Oregon who was 21 years old when Washington selected him. The profile was nearly perfect for a developmental player. Elite athlete, clean footwork, high football IQ, but clearly a project in terms of NFL level strength and technical refinement. His rookie season wasn't bad, it was uneven. He posted approximately a 9.9% pressure rate according to Next Gen Stats, which ranked high among starting right tackles in the league. Veteran pass rushers found technical holes to exploit, especially early in the season when he was facing some of the best edge rushers in the NFL before he'd fully absorbed the system. He ended the 2025 season at around 318 pounds, with body composition he himself called unacceptable. "I was pretty fat," Connerly said. "That's self-awareness." That's a player who knows exactly where he stands and isn't making excuses. What happened this offseason is the real story. Connerly made a decision that very few rookies make with that kind of clarity of intention. He went to Alabama to train with Laramie Tunsil. This is not a small thing. Tunsil runs a training program in Auburn that is genuinely legendary among NFL offensive linemen. Protein at breakfast and lunch, 0 carbs at dinner, daily supplements, strict daily routine. Tunsil described the methodology without sugarcoating it. Every day, every single day, they worked. They ate right. Protein for lunch and breakfast. No carbs for dinner. Supplements every day. A routine they had to commit to completely to change their bodies. Connerly showed up to the offseason program visibly different. Thinner face, more defined arms, and more important than the physical changes, noticeably more confident on the field. The bull rush resistance improved. His comfort in his stance improved. He described going out for OTA reps feeling, in his own words, a lot more free in his movements. But here's what matters most to me, and it's not the physical stuff, which is real and significant. It's the invisible part of the Tunsil-Connerly relationship that's happening in meeting rooms and after practice sessions. Tunsil made a point to show up for OTAs this year, which is not something he typically did. He came out the first week and he came back for minicamp, a 5-time Pro Bowler with over $100 million in career earnings in his 11th NFL season, grinding out sprints at the end of a June minicamp alongside everyone else when nobody needed him to do that. One of the beat reporters covering the team described Tunsil, one of the highest paid offensive linemen in league history, running those final sprints with full effort alongside his teammates. Actions, not words. When a player with that resume does that, it's a signal. Tunsil is investing in this team in a way that goes beyond fulfilling a contract. And part of that investment is Josh Connerly. Tunsil has been consistent in what he says about Connerly since before the kid played his first NFL snap. Last year he said Connerly was going to be a dog and clarified he wasn't just saying that to be polite. Now, a year later, he says when he looks at Connerly, he sees himself. I see a dog. I see somebody who wants it. Somebody who is dying to be great each and every day. That language matters. That's not the generic veteran player answer when someone asks about a young teammate. That's someone putting their mentoring reputation on the line behind this kid. Now let me be straight about the real limitations here, because I think the optimism is justified, but there are some warnings nobody's making loud enough. The most important thing about Connerly in 2026 is that the standard changed. He's no longer a rookie learning under pressure. He's a second-year player who is supposed to show the leap that separates good first-round picks from elite first-round picks. And there's a specific technical number that has to come down, that 9.9% pressure rate. For reference, the best right tackles in the league operate below 5%. Connerly needs to cut it roughly in half to be considered a truly solid NFL starter. That doesn't happen just by adding muscle and cleaning up your diet. It happens with improvements in leverage technique, pre-snap recognition, hand placement sequencing. Tunsil can teach all of that because he executes it better than almost anyone else in the league. The question is whether Connerly can absorb it and apply it under live game pressure against the best pass rushers in the NFC. There's also the new offensive system from coordinator David Blau, which leans toward a more aggressive attack philosophy, more play action, more pre-snap motion. That has direct implications for offensive linemen. They'll need to execute zone blocking with higher frequency, and the timing demands of play action require precision in the initial protection phase. Connerly in a zone blocking scheme, using his athleticism rather than relying on static power, could be the combination that unlocks him. There are genuine reasons to think 2026 is the year this guy makes the leap, but there are also reasons to not get too far ahead of ourselves before training camp and preseason give us real information. And before I move on, I have to hit Chig Okonkwo because what he said on the Command Center podcast stood out to me beyond the hype. Okonkwo was a 4th-round pick by the Titans in 2022. He caught 50 or more passes in each of his last 3 seasons in Tennessee, and he was one of the most coveted free agents this offseason, ranking 36th on Greg Rosenthal's top 101 pending free agents list at NFL.com. Washington signed him, and Okonkwo said something that summarizes exactly why he chose the Commanders. I feel like this is the place where I can finally just unleash. The context matters here. The Commanders Stadium is just a few miles from where Okonkwo went to college at the University of Maryland. For him, this is genuinely close to home. And more importantly, Jaden Daniels in 2024 targeted Zach Ertz 91 times and produced 66 catches, 654 yards, and 7 touchdowns. If Okonkwo reaches that production level, all 3 of those numbers would be career highs for him. The Daniels to tight end connection is already being built in OTAs, according to everyone covering the team on the ground. Okonkwo called Daniels a dog and praised his accuracy. When a new tight end comes in and within a few weeks is talking about the quarterback like that, it's usually a good sign. And since we're talking about what this defense can do in 2026, let's stay on that side of the ball for a minute. Because Hogs Haven dropped a survey today asking a question that sounds simple but actually has real tactical layers. Who is going to lead Washington in sacks this season? Dorrance Armstrong, Odafe Oweh, K'Lavon Chaisson, Darren Payne. 4 candidates, 4 different narratives for what this defense is going to be. Let me give you my honest breakdown of each on Armstrong first because he's the logical favorite. Armstrong has 10.5 sacks in 23 games as a Commander, which projects to roughly 8 sacks per full season at his current career average of 5 per 17 games. Last year, he was on pace for roughly 1 sack per game before going down with an injury in week 7 and missing the final 10 weeks. If he stays healthy, that pace projects to somewhere between 8 and 11 sacks in a full season. He's 29 years old, he's in the best shape of his career, and he already knows Dan Quinn's system from his years in Dallas. Armstrong is the safest bet. He's my pick to lead the team if he plays at least 14 games. Oweh is the most interesting player in this conversation for me, and the one that generates the most genuine debate. He had double-digit sacks in 2024 with the Raiders, which makes him the only player currently on Washington's roster who has ever reached that mark in a single season. He's 27 years old, which puts him right in the prime window for an edge rusher. And there's something specific I noticed from minicamp reports. Durante Jones is designing a defensive scheme that will give Oweh more freedom of movement than he's had in previous stops. If Jones creates situations where Oweh is attacking from unpredictable angles with reduced predictable alignment, he could be genuinely dangerous. The concern with Oweh is consistency. He has seasons where he disappears in the first half and explodes later. If he can bring that consistency across 17 games, he can beat out Armstrong. Chaisson is the name most people don't mention, but tactically he has the most intriguing deployment story. 12.5 sacks over the last 2 seasons combined, 7.5 of those coming with New England last year. Washington is deploying him as an interior pass rusher in Jones's scheme, and if that works, he won't necessarily lead the team in sacks because interior rushers historically accumulate fewer individually, but his disruption could create the clean looks that let Armstrong and Oweh finish plays. That's a different kind of value that doesn't show up as a sack leader. Payne is the wild card. His career high is 11.5 sacks in 2022, one of the best individual seasons for an interior defensive lineman in recent NFL history. His average is 4.8 per 17 games. When the entire defensive line is functioning, when the scheme creates leverage advantages for Payne in the interior, he approaches double digits. When the line isn't working collectively, he's a 4 to 5 sack player. The new Jones scheme needs to answer the question of how it uses Payne before I'm ready to put him as the leader. My honest position: Armstrong leads this team if he stays healthy, and that "if" carries significant weight. If Armstrong gets hurt again, Oweh becomes the natural leader, and I think that outcome is completely viable. What genuinely excites me about the 2026 pass rush, beyond who leads individually, is the possibility that this is a group where the total is greater than any single part. If Jones builds a scheme where Chaisson collapses the interior, Armstrong and Oweh attack from the edges with minimal help side blocking, and Payne contributes his pressure from the 3 technique, Washington could have the deepest and most versatile pass rush group this franchise has seen in years. Ryan Kerrigan's franchise record is 95.5 career sacks. He had at least 11 in a season 4 separate times. The Commanders have had elite individual pass rushers. What's being built now is something different: depth. And in the modern NFL, where quarterbacks and offensive coordinators design passing games specifically to neutralize dominant individual rushers, depth might actually be worth more than a single superstar edge rusher. Jones knows that. Quinn knows that. And if this scheme works, the rest of the NFC is going to find out. That's everything for today, fam. Aiyuk, Connerly, the sack race, all of it on the table. Look, if you've been rocking with this channel, you already know how I feel. The work being done in Ashburn right now is more important to me than any Instagram video. Jaden Daniels cannot carry everything alone. He needs Connerly to protect his blind side. He needs Okonkwo to give defenses a different problem. He needs a pass rush that forces opposing coordinators to change their game plans. All of that is being built right now in the dead zone. Raise hail, always. If this video gave you something, drop a like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments. If the 49ers cut Aiyuk tomorrow, do you sign him or walk away? I want to read every single answer.